Welcome back, everyone, to another one-on-one with Jerry Hall. Today's conversation is with Emil Kalinowski from Alhambra Investment YouTube channel and the Making Sense Euro Dollar University with Jeff Schneider. Now, I always find it extremely interesting to be able to have a conversation with somebody who gets paid for their opinion. That is a fascinating thing to me, to have the information or the way you think about something be so valuable that somebody else will pay you for it. I find it incredible. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. We're going to cover topics like gold. We're going to talk about digital assets. Emil asked me my thoughts, and I give my answers. You all know how heavy I am into this space. We're also going to bring up a topic which I think is extremely important for everybody to consider, regardless of where you are on your path to wealth, abundance, happiness, and freedom, and that is resiliency. If nothing else, this last 6 months in the quote-unquote COVID era has shown those who are the most resilient will be the most prosperous. Yeah, so it's something to think about. That conversation's coming up right now. Well, Emil, thank you so very much for taking the time to join me today. How are you?
Jerry, I'm thrilled. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's been a while. You said come on the show, and I've finally been able to arrange my life in order in such a way that I can. So thanks for being patient. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, I'm glad that you took the time, and a lot of the viewers that may be tuning into this are now getting their feet wet, understanding the greater macro view of the economy and how it relates to their quote-unquote digital asset investment. And I'm sure a lot of them have found Alhambra Investments YouTube channel and the Euro Dollar University that you do with Jeff. I just got to tell you, as a viewer, I enjoy the mix of, there's a bit of lighthearted kind of camaraderie in jibber jabber that goes back between you and Jeff, but also some very fundamental economic information that helps me, the viewer, understand kind of the greater picture as it pertains to finance. And so as a viewer, I want to say thank you. And also, I'd like to get your perspective on how that show came to be and what your purpose, like when you and Jeff were talking about doing it, what did you kind of write down as a mission statement for that show? What did you want to deliver?
Thanks for asking. Yeah, Alhambra Investments is where Jeff works, Jeff Schneider, and he is their head of global research. But as I often say on our show, that's just his day title. That's Bruce Wayne. That's Mr. Clark at Newsday, right? That's not who he really is. Who he is he's a man that investigates what happens in the shadows of our monetary order, and he's been doing it for decades, and he's bringing it out into the open. And for a very long time, nobody cared because everything was going according to plan, right? Nothing broke. So nobody cared that something insane was happening as long as everyone was making money. 2008 happened, things started to break down, but people thought it was just a recession. Central banks did some QE, all right. But then 2011 happened, 2012 happened, this time in Europe. It was the same thing that happened in 2008, but this time in a new location in Europe. And I think that was the first kind of signal something is wrong here. What we just experienced in 2008 wasn't a normal recession. And then it happened again, a third time, 2014, 15, and 16, mostly in the emerging markets, especially in China, where the exact same monetary disorder, things were breaking, took place. It happened in China. And that's when I finally said, all right, I'm going to read Jeff's work. And I had come across his work before, and I knew there was something to it, but I just couldn't hold on to it. Because when Jeff writes as if you understand what he's talking about and that you've been reading him for a long time. So it's hard to get a purchase on what he's talking about. I knew it was important. And I said, this is the third disorder in 7 years, something's wrong. And I committed myself. I said, Emil, read Jeff's work for a month straight, see where you get, if you can understand it. And it all clicked in my head. And after that, I kind of reached out to him. I live in the Cayman Islands. Like you, Jerry, I'm an expatriate, of American citizen. Jerry, you're from America, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, exactly. So I used to be in Arizona, expatriate, but I'm down here in the Cayman Islands. I'm a chartered financial analyst, which is a CFA kind of designation. And every year we hosted a conference where we invited people down to speak to the local community about some theme. Well, one year was my time to be in charge of this show. And I said, let's do this whole episode, this whole show, the whole conference about money. So I got Jeff to come down, Luke Groman, Simon Mikhailovich, Tour de Meester, and Rebecca Spank. So it was all about money from different perspectives. And Jeff realized that I wasn't crazy. I wasn't a jerk, that I didn't punch him in the left kidney. I didn't attack him or anything like that. And he said, all right, he's not the worst person I've ever met in my life. And we kind of just struck up a relationship, casual email relationship. And then one day I just emailed him and I said, Jeff, if you ever need an unpaid intern to do anything, just let me know, because I'd love to work with you. And he said, yeah, I was thinking about doing this Eurodollar University, whereby we would try to bring out my writings to a wider audience. And yada, yada, yada. Now we're doing a podcast and a YouTube show on a weekly basis. And my role, I don't know if, Jerry, if you ever heard of the show Loveline with Adam Carolla and Dr.
Absolutely.
Drew. Right, so that's an old one, right? I think they went off the air in 2005, but they were on the air for 15 years before that. And my role is to be the Adam Carolla, and Jeff is the Dr. Drew. He's bringing the knowledge, and then I'm trying to make it entertaining in some way. The only difference is, of course, that Adam Carolla is infinitely funnier, taller, more handsome, wealthier, and more successful than me. So other than that, that's the show.
I'll tell you, one of my favorite Emil lines ever was after Jeff kind of went off on like maybe a paragraph or two of information. You like said, okay, you said, Jeff, let's bring this back. You said, explain that to me like I'm a Labrador Retriever.
It's true. It's true. I often make a joke that I'm from Arizona State University. So what was that all about? Yes, that's right.
My father is a Sun Devil alum.
Well, when your father went to that school, it was a August University of learning, and he came out an educated young man ready to take on the world. Since then, it's descended into a pit of bikinis, tequila, and sun. And so, like Belushi, John Blutarski in Animal House, at one point I said 7 years of college down the drain. And so that's kind of attitude I go into the show with. I try to, because I know how hard it is to understand Jeff's work. And so I try to share with the audience in a way that they can understand. And what's the cane that I usually lean on? Movies. And that line, explain it to me like I'm a Labrador Retriever, is from Margin Call, a 2011 movie. And there is Jeremy Irons in the role of the CEO. It's a 4 a.m. meeting, and the whole executive team is there. They've just discovered the mortgage-backed securities are about to blow up, and he's asking one of their mathematical rocket scientists to explain exactly what it is with the credit default swaps and the mortgage-backed securities and whatever. And of course, the analyst is a little nervous, and he says, don't worry, just explain it to me as if I was a small child or a Labrador Retriever. It certainly wasn't brains that got me here. And I love that line.
Great line. Wonderful. Well, I'll tell you, you're very humble, and you give a tremendous amount of credit to the success of that show to Jeff, and rightfully so. But I will tell you, you hold your own on that show. And I very much respond to your participation. And so thank you for that. I was hoping that we could do something that you very rarely see in an interview type of format, and that is give viewers kind of a look behind the curtain of what an investor who has a directive of wealth creation and wealth preservation, what the conversation would look like when he is talking to a licensed financial advisor such as yourself. So if I could, I'd like to set a scenario and just go with it.
But before we go too far, I am not a licensed financial advisor. I'm a chartered financial analyst, which is a professional designation. And
I misunderstood that. Now, does that mean that you can set up are you like a wealth consultant, wealth manager? No. Yes.
I could be. This is just a professional designation that's the industry set up so as to tell people this person went through a series of rigorous tests, 3 tests over 2.5 or 3 years, and this person passed them. It's a very difficult test to pass, and it's all about the financial system, how to value assets, that sort of a thing. One thing that was missing from that exam was history, though. That's my biggest complaint. So this was, I took these exams back in when the clock still ran, when all the gears fit, when it was globalization and the monetary order worked. But that doesn't always last. And it would have been great to have more history about bubbles, mistakes, and how the financial system can break down.
Okay. Well, then let me switch gears. Let me ask this question. Do you have personal clients that you help advise them on potential investments?
Sadly, no. No, I don't have any personal clients. I have a company I work for, and I offer them my thoughts about what's happening in the world and the monetary order and where this all might be heading.
Okay,
and whenever I go to speak to crowds, they always insist that I say that any advice I give, if anyone acts on that advice, they will lose money. And then the lawyers chime in and say, yeah, but ironically, if you do the opposite of his advice, you'll also lose money. And then we'll all nod our heads and we'll say, Emil's advice is like the Bermuda Triangle. You just stay away from this area. Okay. And once I say that to the audience, then I can speak to them.
Okay, well, let's not do that then. Let's do this. Let's merge your background and my background. So obviously you have a tremendous background in monetary policy. Let's see, valuation fundamentals, how to look at something and say, okay, these are within X and these are outside of X, X being value or not value or depressed or inflated as far as valuations and things of that nature. I'll try to follow along. I'll ask you a couple of questions about assets that I believe you have a strong knowledge in, and then you can ask me stuff about the space that I have a particular, I don't want to say expertise, but deep knowledge of. How's that?
I love it.
All right. So, Emil, let's talk about the valuation of gold.
Oh my God. Right? You got to butter me up first. You got to take me out to dinner first. This is, whew, all right. So what is the value? What would the question be? How does one value? What is the value?
Let's take a look at, okay, so what, on a broad stroke, right? On a broad stroke, gold at 1950, right? $1,950 an ounce, relative to what the underlying fundamentals of the gold market are presenting.
Got it. Well, the relative fundamentals of the gold market from a supply point of view are in favor of gold because mine supply, which is the great majority of gold supply, going off the top of my head, 85%. And that mine supply is peaking right now and or has already peaked for the foreseeable future. I'm on Twitter at Emil Kalinowski. And just a few days ago, the 17th or the 16th, August 17th, 16th, I posted a graph that showed gold mine supply going back 100 years.
Mhm.
And you'll see the wave, kind of a step up. But what you'll see is that when gold mine supply peaks, it doesn't just peak and then snap back a year or two later. It takes 20 years. 8 years was the shortest time span between a peak and reachieving that previous high. 20 years, 28 years, if I remember, 15 years, 8 years. And I believe this is the 5th peak in gold mine supply in the last 100 years. And that's just the analyst consensus outlook. That's not Emil saying anything. If you look all around all the analysts, you put them all into a hat, it looks like gold mine supply has peaked for a long time. That's good news for gold. And then on the demand side, we have jewelry, which is very heavily used in China and India. And that's not going so well. Why? Because those economies are struggling. But we also have central bank demand, which is doing pretty well. And we also have industrial use of gold, which is less than 10%. Let's call it 10% on average. Don't even worry about that. Don't even consider it. It never matters what industrial use of gold is. And then the big one is, of course, investment demand. And that one is taking off. If you net it all out together, it's reasonably balanced. But does that tell us what the price of gold should be? I've never found that to be the case. I've never found there was a correlation between the fundamentals of supply and demand when it comes to gold and the gold price. I think that's a function because there's so much gold stock out there already.
Interesting.
What do you think?
Well, I'll tell you. Okay, so I don't have the experience or the knowledge around gold that you do, but as a somebody who has a rudimentary understanding of markets, when I look at gold as the base metal, and I'm coming at it from an investor standpoint, the proposition of having gold, physical gold, whether it be certified that that is my gold in the vault, or I have it at my home, is a very, very, very attractive proposition as it pertains to a long-term position in my overall portfolio, right?
Yes.
Gold, whether its value is derived by the fact that shit tons of paper currency are coming into the into the environment, creating a deflationary value of the dollar because of inflationary elements of monetary supply. Gold does very well. It's one of these interesting investments that does well in a reinflation cycle of the business cycle, or even the downturn of a business cycle, and especially when there are currency shocks, caused by other things, like, for instance, this COVID thing, with supply and demand for so many different goods and services being shook up by this, all the effects of the COVID pandemic. Gold is very attractive. Now, there's another side of that, and this is the part that I don't get. It scares me. It makes no sense to me logically, and that is the claims on gold on paper beyond the physical. There's the gold market, which is the physical gold that you and I might transact or store in a vault or have in our home safe. Then there's the gold market that's built on, it's just paper. It's claims on gold that might already be claimed by something else, and they're all done by these kind of, like, to me, mysterious gold broker bank things that are these these shadow creatures that
Mm-hmm.
create these incredible exotic, I guess if you look at the base word, it would be derivative of the underlying. That scares me because, you know, I go back to always thinking about the physical and supply and demand. And let's say everybody claimed their gold, got their gold in their own home safes. What happens to all those paper claims of gold? It makes no sense to me. I don't even know how it can be legal.
No, I think it's perfectly natural what you're saying. It's an instinctual aversion
Yes, thank you.
to uh, to a financial asset, an item, a thing that's limited in supply, but has been multiplied out by 20 or 30, if I remember correctly, via derivatives. And that doesn't make sense, especially it doesn't make sense when it comes to gold or silver. I guess it makes sense when it comes to loans and credit and financial instruments. I guess so, because they're paper, and so you can have a derivative of that. But yes, that's why whenever I talk about gold with someone, I always think of it in the physical form, because if you want to transact the paper stuff, there's financial instruments. Why don't you transact capital market securities? That makes sense. Gold is not for paper market trading. Gold is there to do nothing. It's there to sit and do nothing, which is its miracle, right? Because in this world of constant change, to find something that doesn't change, that remains constant, that is the least volatile financial asset that we know of, that societies across time throughout the world have agreed that this is valuable, right? You go back in time, you bring a financial certificate to the Incas, they're going to say, what is this? We don't want this. You take a beautiful Rembrandt painting and you go into the future or go back in time, it may not be acceptable. Diamonds, each of them is different. Gold has been vouched by civilizations throughout time to be valuable. And why? Because it doesn't change. It's a great store of value, a great store of wealth. And I always recommend, whenever discussing with friends, that if they're interested in gold, to go for the physical stuff, not the paper stuff. Trading, perfectly fine, but it seems incongruent, right? You know what always reminds me of is that a commercial that I think it was a insurance commercial with State Farm, I believe. You remember, it was the man was on the phone late at night. I don't know if you remember this, Jerry. He was on the phone late at night. He's whispering in the phone, and he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you can do this for me? Yeah, that's real good. Yeah, pile it on high and deep. I love it." And then the wife comes down, and, "Who are you talking to?" And he says, "I'm
Garrett
talking
from
to..."
State Farm.
Yeah, exactly. And then she says, "Well, Joe sounds hideous." And he says, "Yeah, because..." Oh, no, she sounds hideous. And he says, "Yeah, because it's a guy." The point being, gold is not a great investment. It's
Uh-uh.
a different thing. It's not for investments. It's not for trading. It's for wealth storage.
Right. Well, and I totally get why if you have something to protect, having an asset like gold in your portfolio does a couple of things. It allows you to take greater risks with the sections of your portfolio that are not gold, right? So if I had a portfolio of say the traditional 60-40, right? 60 bonds, 40 equities. In today's world, that affords me very little risk taking because bonds suck as far as a vehicle to get return on, and equities, we've seen, are subject to, depending upon what's going on, huge degrees of volatility. So with that being said, you now factor in, let's say you took that and made it something like a 40-40-20, where it's 40 bonds, 40 equities, and 20% gold. Now all of a sudden you are in a position where you can take a greater amount of risk in the equity market because you're hedged on the other side with gold. I get that. I don't necessarily play that game. I don't have that kind of wealth to deal with. I made a play several years ago when I got completely out of equities and I got into digital assets. I made a play that, well, it's kind of, I was going for the fences. So I took my entire equity stake, I got it into digital assets, into the projects that I did the most research on, and found to have a use case and a team and a path to success, and said, okay, I placed my bets. Now let it ride. Let's see what happens. And if you were looking at this as a roulette spin, the wheel is still turning and the ball is still moving. So nothing's landed yet. We don't know if I would be successful or not. But chances are, I believe I am. My case just gets stronger and stronger every day, influenced by
Definitely.
what's going on outside of it too.
I like to, yeah, I guess I'm more of a risk averse investor, and I enjoy wealth preservation versus wealth appreciation. That suits me better. I'm more interested in that. But I'm also aware that, there are limits to my knowledge. We don't know how anything's going to turn out. Equities have been doing great for inexplicable reasons. And so maybe we are wrong. And so that's why, sometimes we should have like an all-weather portfolio. So when you said 60-40, I always thought that was so incomplete, so undiversified. I always like the idea of an all-weather portfolio where maybe chopping up your portfolio into fifths, where you've got bonds, stocks, cash, precious metals, and then number 5 would be other, where cryptocurrencies can go, real estate, business.
Sure.
And that seems like you're going to be able to ride out inflation, deflation, if something goes wrong with the banking system, if there's a boom. I like that idea of reaching out in multiple directions on that roulette table.
Oh, I totally agree. Everything, there's no broad stroke answer for any of these things, right? So everything is circumstantial in a way. I believe I can say that. My circumstance, so that I didn't explain it, I had a total of $50,000. That's not enough to build a all-weather portfolio, because $50,000 doesn't generate me enough to live. I cannot sustain myself, even though currently I live on anywhere from $350 to $500 a month total. Those are
Love
US
it.
dollars. And I made a decision to live this modestly because I wanted that money in the market, because I'm swinging for the fences. I want to turn 50,000 into several million. And I believe I found a conduit to do that in a set of vehicles that afford me the best the best chance to do that within a couple of these items in the digital asset space. Now, it's a completely different story if you're talking about, okay, you got $1.5 million that's generating you, I don't know, $10,000 a month, whether it be through interests or dividends or a combination of year-over-year capital appreciation, what have you. Those are completely different scenarios. And I believe as my portfolio grows, the more risk averse I will become. You know what I mean? I mean, and I don't believe I'm alone in that. And there's a lot of people in the digital asset space that are making kind of a very similar play. They're taking a chunk and they're saying, all right, I see the same setup as the cellular communication boom of the late 80s. I see the internet boom of the 90s happening in this tech space as it pertains to the transmission of value and all the things that come with programmable money and basically that are now afforded to us with trustless, immutable blockchain DLT type systems. Okay, great. If the thesis plays out, my 50 will make me over $1.5 million. Now, I will play it completely different when we get there, right? It'll be a completely different game because now we'll have something to protect.
How did you do? Sorry to interrupt, Jerry. How did you do during the blow off top in, let's see, when was it? 2018?
I was out in 2016.
I did.
Made
Go ahead.
a very conscious decision when I saw when I became cognizant or aware of the GDP of the United States and kind of the world, this is in 2015, 2016, predominantly being debt. The growth of the world globally was measured in debt. It wasn't measured in incredible new products, technologies that were building the products that we all love and want better, faster, cheaper,
Mm-hmm.
employing more people, wages going up, real estate stable. That isn't at all what was going on. There was a valuation growth boom, but it was all debt predicated. And I saw this, I went, I could not run my house like the world is running the monetary system. Therefore, if I ran my house like the world's running its monetary system, I will be either put in jail,
Mm-hmm.
bankrupt, or a combination of both. Well, if that would happen to me, then eventually it's going to catch up to them, right? Because you can only fool all the people part of the time. I thought, okay, I got out of everything, sold everything, paid off all my debt. This was in 2016. Went off to Hawaii to work on organic farms while I recalibrated my thinking of how I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And after doing that and discovering digital assets in 2018, I got myself in.
Excellent. Got it. Yeah, I was thinking of the boom, the Bitcoin boom and the digital asset boom
Yeah, I wasn't
bubble.
there for that. I missed that. I missed
So
the boom.
that would have been a great experience for you to test out what happens to your risk aversion as your portfolio is, growing up through the roof. Me personally, I bought in at a few years before at a low price, and then I sold when it got crazy, right? But I sold when it got crazy, I think at 2000. I didn't sell everything, but I sold enough because, I was happy. I mean, I'm out. This is insane. And of course, it went up. Bitcoin, I'm talking about, it went up to 18, 19,000. Just goes to show that you've got to have a system and a methodology of trading when it comes to this. That was my lesson, is that I left a good amount of money on the table because I was just a naive kind of buy and hold
Right.
for my Bitcoin. It never occurred to me that I would be, realizing insane profits just a few years after investing. So it was a good lesson for me, and just something to think about in the future, because I think the future is bright for digital assets as well. I don't know very much about them outside of Bitcoin, and what I know there is pretty naive, no doubt, compared to you. But that's at least my exposure to digital assets.
Well, I'll tell you. So, to kind of give you like I told you, I started with 50,000. I've since subsequently added another 20 over the last 2.5 years. So I have approximately 70,000 US dollars in a basket of 5 digital assets. It's primarily Bitcoin, XRP, and Cardano, a smart contracts platform, with smaller holdings in Ethereum, Stellar, and VET, which is a supply chain mega smart contract platform. Now, the idea that I have is that I'm very clear on what my average price per coin is, and I know exactly how many coins I have. And I've developed an exit strategy based off of a pool of percentages. So,
Excellent. Good.
at 100x, or sorry, at double. So when my investment in that asset doubles, I take out my investment. Right. So for instance, XRP, I know my average cost per coin is 42 cents. When it gets to 84 cents, I will take my initial investment out.
Got it. Yeah. Okay.
All right. And then I have a strategy of 20, 20, 20. So, and when I say 20, 20, 20, I'm talking about it. Each time, each cash out will be 20% of the balance. 20% of the balance at this mark, 20% of the balance at this mark, 20% of the balance at this mark. So obviously the withdrawals get smaller, but the valuations of the underlying asset will be are stepped so much higher than my original exit that I put, like I said, I believe my $70,000 will be at least $1.5 million based off of the mathematical principle that I put. And when I get I get my 70,000 out, that is going to be basically going into what I would call aristocrat dividend stocks, that seem to be somewhat COVID resistant, seem to be, safe.
What about, have you put together a plan if it doesn't reach some new level where you take out the 20% and it starts retracing, right? Because you've got 5, 6, 7 digital assets. They're not all going to be winners. Some of them are. And some of them are going to ride the coattails of the winners, but then probably start ticking back down. Do you have a plan when you see those prices falling of taking profits out? Or are you going to say, I'm going to...
It's basically like this. If I get my original investment out, then literally everything in the portfolio is house money. Okay? And the 20%, 20%, 20% are based off of going into assets that will generate an income.
Mm-hmm.
So if I don't hit marks, right? For instance, if I don't hit exit marks, then it means I'm not increasing my income. This, remember, all frames back to, I'm living on $350, $500 a month right now with zero income coming from my digital asset investments. Now, several of the digital assets that I'm invested in have reoccurring, whether they be more asset accumulation through staking, which is no different than getting a dividend reinvestment of the asset. So I get more of the underlying asset on chronological intervals, like for instance, the Cardano staking rewards is every 5 days. The T token generates a VThor token, which is used as the gasoline, the fuel to drive. So every function on the VeChain platform requires this VThor, quote unquote, fuel to make it happen. Well, the more of the VET token that you hold, the more VThor you generate. There's a secondary market to sell your VThor, or you can use it yourself if your business is on that blockchain to pay for the operations of, it's a way to pay for using the blockchain, the cost necessary to have it maintain itself. Very similar to mining rewards for Bitcoin.
So if you were to ask me, do I recommend gold ownership? I would say, well, it depends, but generally, yes, it would be a good idea to have some gold.
Yeah.
What about for someone, if I came to you, if I had a question, I said, I'm a Bitcoin holder. Where should I go next? I don't, if I wanted to, should I allocate more to Bitcoin? I've heard more and more about Cardano. I don't know how to spell Cardano. I don't know if it begins with a C or a K. Is there an H at the end of Cardano? So that's my level of knowledge. But where should someone like me that has money that they can that would allocate money that can go to zero and is a long-term holder? That's not my style, is to trade.
Well, you know what? And I've had a lot of people ask me, whether it be through private messages or DMs and stuff, and they ask for advice. And although I'm not, although in Costa Rica, I'm getting my license to be a financial consultant, I'm not your financial consultant. And that's what I kind of put out there. But I do tell people, everything starts with the individual. What are your goals? Really, what do you want? What are you trying to accomplish with an investment? Doesn't matter. I think it all goes back to goals. So what are your goals? If your goals are to have a risk on approach to, like you said, money that you could allocate to a potential 1, 2, 3,000% gain type of asset, well, there are definitely some very well established, well positioned players in the digital asset space that have that potential, right? I don't know if Bitcoin does at its current levels at $12,000. I don't know if it can do a 3,000% increase in your lifetime. However, there are some digital assets that have fundamental companies behind them, teams, right? Management teams, development teams. They have relationships. They have existing clients. They have whether it be favorable partnerships and relationships, whether it be they're on advisory boards of things like maybe the Federal Reserve Faster Payments Task Force, for one example, these kind of things that you would look at and go, they may not be directly value added, but indirectly they are, because these people, it's like you and me. If you and me have dinner with the right people, 6, 7, 8 times a year, some stuff is going to rub off.
I don't know. I've got gaps in my teeth. I'll probably end up with asparagus in my teeth. I don't know how those successful.
So that's where I would start, and so I have a couple of projects that I believe are sound, that fit that criteria as far as team, partnership, an existing business. I mean, there is business being conducted right now, and a macro view that shows that its particular use case, the value proposition that it brings to the marketplace, is increasing in demand. Therefore, adoption has a very high likelihood of happening. And then, we know network effects. So adoption begets more adoption, just like liquidity in a market. If it's really a valuable thing, well, capital always flows to real value in the end.
That's
over time.
That is what I'm looking for. As I said, I'm not a trader, and I'm not interested in going from 1 cent to $1.
You couldn't go.
I'm more interested.
XRP.
I want to see how this develops over a few years.
All right. Well, I mean, if you were going to take, let's say you had 0.5% of your portfolio is literally long shot money, right? Money that, like you said, if it went away tomorrow, wouldn't that be a big deal? But had a potential to give you some, 1,000+% return on your investment. I'd say XRP, which is the 3rd largest digital asset in market cap, a smart contract programmable money platform called Cardano, which its token is ADA, and this incredible little supply chain blockchain company that's got partnerships with like Walmart China, BMW. They have people behind them like KPMG. I mean, these are big. These are not tiny little, like John Smith's, the tomato farmer, signed up on the supply chain. I mean, this is real big players. It's called VeChain, and its token is called VET. Those 3 players in even 33%, 33.33% allocation to those 3. You've got 2 of them that produce value in the form of either A, you stake your Cardano to get more Cardano, or VeChain, that you, just by the fact that you own it, you're producing this VTHOR, which is the gas for the protocol, which is needed. It's needed. You have to have it. You can't do anything on it without this VTHOR. So there's a secondary market for that. And XRP, you have a capital appreciation play because it's anchored in payments, and everything in the world revolves around payments, whether it's a remittance, whether it's a commercial, vendor to supplier, to shipper, to trucker, to whatever, payments. And it settles in 3 seconds, and its actual value. No, it settles in 3 seconds.
Excellent.
Monster vertical. So those are the 3. 0.5%. You wouldn't feel it if it went to 0. And if they paid off, you'd go, wow, these are monsters.
And you know what I like also about this idea is it also offers diversification outside of the financial system. Everyone thinks about diversifying, but they usually do it within the financial system or within banks. And I think we're in a particular moment in history where diversifying as broadly as possible would be wise, not just across financial assets or asset classes, but Who are your custodians? Do you know? Are all your assets with just one or two custodians? Which legal jurisdictions are they in? And are they all in the financial system? So taking some money out of a bank and putting it into a digital asset at least accomplishes, for me, that one goal that I have is diversifying more broadly than one perhaps hears about on CNBC or Bloomberg. And so that's very appealing to me during this particular moment in our history when it seems like the monetary order is dying. And in previous such instances, there was so much upheaval that it was wise to be and both, be balanced and be ready to move in a number of directions, because there's a lot of volatility and disorder, and we don't know what the future will hold. But we sense that there'll be a lot more upheaval in this decade than in previous decades.
Unfortunately, there are mountains of macro evidence to support that statement. And as sad as it is to say, there is going to be a lot of pain coming. There is going to be a lot of pain coming. And I think the sooner people start to brace, prepare, and settle their lives in such a way that can take that shock, right, the better off they'll be.
It's all about resiliency now.
Correct.
For decades, let's say since the 90s, but before that as well, the world economy has been running on the idea of efficiency, just-in-time inventory, making a profit, keeping costs low, because the pie was expanding. So your revenue was growing. And if you were efficient, you could gain and make a lot of money. But now we've entered a new era. Globalization is ending. Instead of cooperation on the world stage, we see competition. And in those kind of moments, especially when there's a break in the monetary order, when the economic pie is not growing or not growing for everyone, you want to emphasize resiliency over efficiency. Can you, your portfolio, your family, can you make it through the paradigm shift, through the phase transition to the next era, which I'm very optimistic about and I'm looking forward to? But that transition, it's going to be tough. Resiliency over efficiency is something I keep in mind when I'm thinking about my work, my investments.
What an incredible perspective. And I'll tell you that I think along the same lines as you do, obviously not as eloquently. That was very eloquently stated, and I want to thank you for that. And it also kind of made it really simple. How are my daily life functions? Are they resilient? Where are the weak points? Where are the elements of risk, right? What can chop the legs out from underneath my table, right? Mm-hmm. And so thank you for that, because now I get to go back and I can kind of look at the way I've structured my quote unquote life and the future that I think is coming, and put on that lens. Am I building something that's resilient? I know I'm building something that can be incredibly fruitful, but is it resilient? Are there structural elements that are extremely fragile that maybe I haven't put any thought to or dismissed or just overlooked? So thank you. That's a nice, really good context to kind of take forward and factor into quote unquote the planning and reevaluation stage, because I believe nothing is set it and forget it. I think everything requires reevaluation, maybe not as frequently as other things, but it's an important process to go back and reevaluate elements of your life, whether they be financial, emotional, spiritual, what have you. So
that's right. I'm glad you added that last part there. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that last part, that's something that Chris Martenson often mentions. We're doing a financial show. We're talking about resiliency of our portfolio, but Chris Martenson also talks about diversifying across a number of fields. How's your health? How's your spirituality? How are your relationship with your family, with your neighbors, your society? multiple dimensions of diversification, resiliency? Can you do something helpful to the community? Because you're going to be more valued than if you can't. Are you friends with important people, or just with church leaders, or in the community? Are you known as a good person? That's going to be very important, because and now I'm thinking of the fourth turning. It's the idea of going through a winter. And going through winter alone is so hard, and it's unpleasant, and you don't want to do it. So diversify your portfolio, but also introduce resiliency into your life, just like how you were saying, spiritually, physically, emotionally, community.
Wonderful. What a high note to kind of wind down the show with right there. Good job, Emil. So I'm looking at the clock. You've been so gracious with your time, and I know you're a busy man.
That's not true. My time is worthless. You want to do a 24-hour marathon? Let's do it right now.
I'd love to, but there's just not enough space in the computer to handle that. I will.
That's a good point. I never thought about that. If we ever did a charity run, yeah, right. That's a good point.
You gotta have the capacity. You gotta have the capacity. Let's end this sucker with your final thought.
My final thought is that I love what we're doing, both of us, and that's teaching the community, reaching out to people, offering what wisdom we may have that we feel we have, and then learning from people as well. So that's what you do on your show. That's what I try to do with Jeff on the Making Sense podcast and YouTube show. And it's just all about helping the community, like-minded people, try to make it through the next 10 years, because on the other side of this 10 years, I believe there's a real golden age. But as Grant Williams, the Real Vision founder and macroeconomist, said a few years ago, he anticipates that there will be more books written about this period than any period since World War II. And most people don't believe that history can happen to them. That happens to other people that are usually in the past. But I think we're going through history. It's not going to be pleasant. We'll be glad it's over. But we need a community to do it. And our YouTube shows are, one little effort at that to enrich everyone.
Right on. Well, I'm absolutely grateful that you do what you do with Making Sense and with Jeff and stuff through the Alhambra Investments YouTube channel. I know that island life, as glorious as it can also be trying at times. So I want to commend you on your efforts to create a little bit of sovereignty for yourself as it pertains to being able to, sustain yourself. And I hope that experience, and I'm talking about your home garden, grows and you divine some real enjoyment through the process of learning about soils and what you can grow and when you should grow it and how much water this needs versus that, and have fun with it, because it opened up a whole world for me that I didn't really think too much about until I got myself immersed in it when I went to Hawaii. So good for you. I hope that garden grows and you get to expand its footprint on your property.
I appreciate it, Jerry.
Yeah, it's such a joy working with the earth.
And it's good also philosophically. It puts you back in tune with nature. Our society is so advanced, and we consider ourselves to be apart from nature, and that's not healthy, especially when it comes to cycles and when it comes to winter. Winter occurs in human events and human civilizations as well, and it's just nice to get your hands dirty. But it does mean that I am an old man now, because you don't see strapping young men gardening. That's what old men do. They have a warm glass of milk before they go to bed at 9, and that's me.
Bravo. Folks, from the Cayman Islands and from beautiful Costa Rica, thanks for tuning in. And until next time, Pura Vida.